So, what I'm talking about today, again, we're talking about reactivity and what it's like having a reactive dog. And hi, Vanessa. One of the things that we need to really consider is how we respond to our dog's reactivity, because it's can be quite an all-consuming thing sometimes if you've got a reactive dog, because it changes your perception of your life with your dog. It can be to such a profound degree. So I just wanted to really go through a few strategies that you can use that might help you, but also just talk about how we can change our mindset a little bit and to make it easier and to help keep that relationship with our dog really positive. Because that's the problem, isn't it? Sometimes if your dog's reactive, it sort of starts to poison that relationship, because that dream that you had with your dog of going out for lovely, happy walks where you were both relaxed, you're both having a lovely time, that's kind of gone. That it feels like that dream feels such a long, long, long way away. And you can start to feel quite almost resentful, I suppose. And that could be a really, really, really hard time. So we need to break this down into little steps, I think. So the first one is to think that how our dog, we've almost got this chain. It's like this ping-ponging chain, isn't it? So you're out for a walk, your dog has a reaction, whether it's an excited reaction, a fearful reaction, whatever. So they see another dog, they have a reaction. We then react to the dog's reaction. The dog then reacts to our reaction to them reaction. Can you kind of see where this is going? You get this real amplification of the situation, and it can just end up getting worse and worse and worse. So it's our job really as the humans to see if we could say, actually, that chain needs to stop here, that chain needs to stop with me. But having said that, that's an awful lot easier said than done. So we need to have some things in place to help us. And I think the first thing to remember is that when our dogs are having some sort of reaction, whether it's an excitement or a fear reaction, whatever, when they are having that reaction, they're telling us some things about what's going on inside them. The first thing they're telling us is that they're really struggling. No dog goes out to, out on a walk with you and makes a conscious decision. Do you know what? I am going to react and be really difficult today. So it's not your dog making a conscious decision. Therefore, there's no point us getting annoyed with them. A, it gets us nowhere, and B, given that it's not our dog's conscious decision, it's something that they at this stage can't help. What is happening, however, is that our dog is struggling. They are struggling to regulate their own emotions, because any kind of, when you've got a reactive dog, it's a bit of a label and it covers all sorts of different things that are going on. But in a very broad terms, what it means is that you've got a dog who over their response to an event is too big. Basically, it's not appropriate. They have a big response rather than an appropriate response. And that's, as I say, because they're struggling to regulate how they're feeling. So we need to think to ourselves, okay, well, what is driving that feeling? What is driving that difficulty in self-regulation? Now, when we see, it's great, isn't it? You have a look on YouTube or on the telly or whatever, and there are these quick fixes. Okay, I will fix your dog. I will fix your dog. They won't react anymore. Now, what's happening there with a quick fix, and this makes total sense when you think about it, is what we're doing is we're suppressing the behaviour. So we're trying to get our dog to just not react, rather than dealing with the big feelings that are going on underneath that. And that's going to be a really unpleasant experience for our dog. Okay, because they're trying to, you know, it's like if I talked before about I'm not very good with heights. Um, and if you know, put me on the edge of a cliff as if I'm about to fall off, and I'm like, oh my God, getting slightly hysterical, and then someone just punches me in the face, I might stop being hysterical. But actually, on the inside, it's just absolutely breaking you. And that's similar to what can happen with our dogs with a quick fix. So we need to be looking at, okay, so how can we help them to regulate how they're feeling? How can we help them to make their response more proportionate? So, and that's kind of to do with, you know, some of the other things that we've been talking about in these lives going on. But what we can do, because we understand that, and because as humans we get that it's not that they're doing anything bad, what that should teach us to do is to support our dogs through their reactivity rather than trying to stop it by shouting, by apologising to the other person, by telling them they're silly, all those other things, or indeed by putting them in that situation in the first place. So that's the first thing, is just remember that whatever your response is, having a negative response towards your dog isn't helpful. It's not going to fix anything, and it's really not very fair on your dog. It's probably not very fair on you either, because having that negative kind of response doesn't make anybody feel good. So hopefully just having that knowledge can help you to sort of feel a little bit calmer. The other thing that it tells you is having that knowledge as to where that reaction's coming from means that you don't have to feel that embarrassment. And I know it's all well and good me saying don't feel the embarrassment. Actually not feeling the embarrassment in real life is an awful lot more difficult. But having that knowledge there hopefully will help to start you on that path to remember that, you know, it's not your fault. It's not your dog's fault. It's just, you know, a struggle that they're having that we can, for a million and one different reasons, they might be having that struggle. So we don't need to feel embarrassed. So, you know, that's something I would just like to give you that little bit of support with now, to say you don't have to, because it's not your fault. And anyone that's judging, that says everything about them. It doesn't say anything about you. It doesn't say anything about your dog. So what actually can we do? Okay, so if I'm walking a dog, they start having a reaction. What's the first thing that happens? You can feel your heart start to go a little bit faster. You tense up, don't you? You tense up, you tighten that lead right back in again, and everything is really tight and really tense. So the message that your dog gets for that, because they can feel what you're doing through that lead and through that harness, and the message that you're giving them is, yes, in fact, dog, you are correct. There is something here to worry about. So they're going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to have to really, really work hard to keep whatever it is away, or, you know, and I'm going to have to amplify what I'm doing. However, having said that, you know, that tension, it's a perfectly natural physiological response from us. And it's the same reason that our dogs are reacting. It's that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, faff about. No more Fs have appeared since last we spoke about them, thankfully. It's totally, totally natural. So we need to be really consciously working out how we can prevent that from happening. And that's going to be a question of rehearsing what we're going to do when our dog is not reacting. Because in the moment, that is far too difficult a time for you to be able to change your behaviour. So, and when you're walking your dog, or even when you're at home, it's a really good idea to practice doing things like dropping your shoulders to relax yourself. Maybe practice a couple of breathing techniques, which can be really effective. So there was one that I was shown just the other day that actually I thought worked really, really well. It's really, really simple. So you can do this along with me now if you want. So this breathing technique, what we're going to do is we're going to empty the lungs, then you're going to take a deep breath in as far as you can, and then breathe in a little bit more, and then exhale like that. So let's empty the lungs, breathe in again, and then exhale. Now, if you try that, I don't know about you, but I feel like a release of tension just kind of here. So I quite like that, and you will feel like an idiot at first when you're doing it, obviously. But it really does pay off in terms of how you feel and how you can help yourself to relax. Even if it's after the event, even if it's after the reaction, you think, oh, I meant to do my breathing when my dog was reacting and I completely forgot. Then do it afterwards, be kind to yourself in that kind of way. Another thing that you can do, so you're consciously dropping your shoulders, you're thinking about the breathing. But another thing you can do when your dog isn't reacting is sort of try to recreate what your body does when you get a reaction. So you're walking around, everything's really relaxed, you've got your dog with you, there's nothing around, your dog is just pootling about, having a lovely time. Maybe you could just tense right up like that, go like you would if your dog was reacting, and then just relax again and carry on doing what you're doing. So again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to disassociate what you're doing with the fact that your dog's reacting and the fact that there's something over there that your dog's reacting to. So that's another one you could try. You could even follow that up maybe with a little scatter feed to help your dog calm down after that. That's not a bad idea. So those are some things some of the reasons that our response is so important, and how we can try to start breaking that cycle a little bit. And similarly, as I've talked before about when you're training a dog with reactivity to actually, do things and behave in a particular way, you need to practice the things that you're going to do at home first, or somewhere where you've got a really super low distraction environment, and there's nothing stressful going on at all, when your dog's brain is in a position to learn. Because when they're reacting, trying to get them to do something they don't really know how to do, not only will it not work, but it also can be quite punishing for the dog. And it's the same for you. So do try to practice these things so they feel a little bit more natural, but when you're in a much more relaxed state of mind. And I think you'll find that really, really useful. So we've got the knowledge now that your dog's reactivity isn't something for you to feel guilty about. It doesn't mean that they're being naughty or bad. They are not being a bad dog. And if I could spread one piece of wisdom in the world of dog ownership, that would be it. That reactive dogs are dogs that are struggling. They are not bad dogs. And that would sort of help us, those of us here that have reactive dogs, to not feel quite so judged, because you can feel super judged, can't you? So yeah, we know that they're not bad dogs, and we also know that how we react then feeds into how the dog feels, which then helps them to make a decision. Okay, what am I going to do next? Am I going to react more, or am I going to start feeling a little bit better about the world? It makes a huge difference. You'd be amazed how much a difference this part of it can be. But then there are other things that are going on as well that just make it even more difficult for us as humans. So if you remember back to when you decided you were going to get the dog that you may be struggling with at the moment with their reactivity, and we all have in our heads, don't we, when we got a dog, we've got this kind of vision of what life with that dog is actually going to look like. And for a lot of us, that's going to involve going for walks. That's going to involve maybe walking with friends with dogs. And it's going to be, having a dog that basically isn't going to turn into a barking, lunging, leaping, excited, whatever, complete struggle every time it sees another dog or a person or a bin lorry or whatever is that your dog is reactive to. We don't, those kind of scenarios generally aren't included in our dream for when we get ourselves to get our dog. So when we find ourselves in this position where we have a dog that's more difficult to walk and that is reactive, that involves a certain amount of grief, because the dream that we had of what life was going to look like and what walks were going to look like with our dogs, that kind of feels like it's gone. And we've sort of lost that dream. It's not the way that we wanted it to be. And you know what? That really can be really painful. And that can have a huge impact on our relationships with our dogs. Um, and our sort of our general outlook about how we can live with these dogs. It feels like that dream that we had has been taken away from us because we've got a dog that can't cope in a situation. And you know, I think that's one of the biggest reasons that people will resort to really aversive methods. So using things like prong collars, using things like e-collars, using things like, you know, yanking on slip leads, all those kind of things. Because even though deep down inside we know that they're not the right thing to do, they're not a kind thing to do, and they're not in our dog's best interest, if they mean that actually maybe we'll get that dream, we can kind of, you know, sometimes we kid ourselves that it's okay to do those things. So I do get it. I understand it when people do those things, until they know better, until they know that that's kind of not the thing to do. So yeah, there's definitely this grief process I think that we go through, and that can sometimes be exacerbated. So, say you had a previous dog who wasn't reactive at all. Hi Fiona. So say you had a previous dog that wasn't reactive, and and then you get this new dog, and you're thinking, it's kind of natural to compare them, isn't it? You kind of think, well, hi Christina, my other dog, we could go out for these lovely chilled out walks, have an absolutely beautiful time. It was really chilled, it was lovely, everyone had a great time. And now I've got this new dog, and you know what? They're just not as good. So we compare, and that can be even worse. So say we have we've got a new dog that's the same breed as our old dog, and we're thinking, well, they're both Chihuahuas, or they're both, I don't know, Labradors, or whatever it is that they are. Surely my new one should be the same as my old one. They're both the same breed. But the thing is, it kind of doesn't work like that. If you think, you know, that there were some certain, obviously there are genetic similarities with dogs of the same breed. But if you think about, say, in a family with siblings, parents, aunts, uncles, blah, blah, blah. So within that family, you have a huge number different types of personalities, lots of different personalities. You know, we've all know families, or we're in one ourselves, where siblings are just chalk and cheese. They're so different. And yet, those people are sharing far more of their DNA than two unrelated Labradors are. Okay, so those personality difference and those trait differences are totally normal. There is far more variation within each breed than there is between breeds. So if you compare one Labrador to your next Labrador, um, and you compare a Labrador to the Border Collie down the road, you might find more similarities between your Labrador and the Border Collie in terms of their personality, just because there's that much variation. So although within breeds, you know, we know we've designed them and we've bred them for a particular purpose, and that gives them various drives and various preferences, and they are more likely to behave in certain ways in some circumstances, that doesn't necessarily mean that their temperament is always going to be super predictable and what we're expecting it to be. And it certainly doesn't mean that one individual is going to be really, really similar to another individual. And yet, when you're in that situation, how hard is it not to compare the two dogs, or three dogs, or four dogs, or however many you've had? You do. And again, it's a natural human nature thing. So what can we do about it? Because if you're walking with your reactive dog, now we know now that they are, they are struggling to regulate their emotions. They've got lots of big emotions going on. We also know that the reaction that they're having isn't their fault, but why can't they be more like the last dog? And it's really easy, isn't it, to get sucked into that thing as, do you know what? I'm really, really pissed off with this dog. My other dog was brilliant, and this one, oh, this is a troublemaker. This one's trouble. And it's going to be quite difficult to get yourself out of that kind of way of thinking. And it's all linked into that grief as well. It's all linked into the, well, it's not living up to my expectations. There are certain bits of my expectations that right now I can't have. And that's hard. So yeah, so that's why, and that kind of, your dog will pick up on that. And we know how big, how empathic dogs can be. If we're poorly, we're feeling down in the dumps. Loads, not every dog, but an awful lot of dogs, they pick up on it and they'll come and sit with you or whatever else, or even just, sit over the room from you, looking at you in a pitying way. They pick up on how we're feeling. So that kind of disconnect that you get through that process of not getting what you originally expected and comparing, that's going to come through to the dog as well. And that's going to make them feel a little bit insecure. And guess what? When the dog feels a little bit insecure, it's not as optimistic. When it's not as optimistic, it's going to be more likely to react to stuff, which makes it really hard. But now we know that, then that's something that we can address within ourselves, we can come to terms with, and then we can move forward. So today wasn't about saying, well, this is how we fix all these issues, although I hope I've given you a couple of strategies that will help you in terms of the breathing, the setting up situations where there are no distractions, so you can sort of pretend there's a reaction going on when there isn't. All those kind of things, really practical. But mainly it's about you having that awareness and you really being able to sit down and think to yourself, well, how do I feel about my dog? How do I feel about how they're reacting? And just having that awareness of how you're feeling, and then putting into the mix of that the emotions behind why your dog is actually doing it in the first place. So it's something actually when I've worked with, Dash, for example, getting that empathy and that understanding in, I think is pivotal, really, to being able to turn that around, because it changed completely how I held myself when Dash was having a reaction, and it changed completely my reaction to his reaction. And that was just out of that understanding about what was driving him, and about the understanding about what was driving how I felt about it.